Greetings and salutations. I'm Kimberly HayDay.
And I'm Amanda Day.
And you are listening to the Fundraising HayDay podcast, and we thank you.
Where we cover the how-tos about grants and fundraising.
And how we can all do a better job of changing the world for the better through philanthropy.
Special shout out to our Patreon subscribers who help make this podcast possible. To join this amazing community with monthly playlists, a book club, wide open mistakes were made, and Kimberly's monthly musings, visit patreon.com/fundraisinghayday. So if you're looking to up your grant game in 2026, but you're not sure that you've got time for a week-long conference or even 2 days of grant training, then look no further than HayDay Services on-demand courses. We offer a 12-module grant writing audio course and a 12-module grant management audio course.
We just wanted to do something to give you information on your own schedule. Learn from our mistakes while you're folding laundry. Get some tips and tricks about budgets or objectives or grant management from Amanda Day, keeper of all things in a binder, all about grant management. But seriously, it's a easy way to brush up on things. You can buy individual modules. They're $19.99 each, or you can buy a whole audio course on either grant writing or grant management or both. So all you got to do is visit haydayservices.com/shop to find the module or series that is going to work for you. So we talk a lot about nonprofits on this podcast because, hello. It's a podcast about fundraising and grant writing and all things with nonprofits and local government agencies. But we would be remiss, and actually, I just a slight full disclosure and confession here, Amanda. If you would allow me, there's so many different agencies and organizations that are official and non-official that are operating in this area of helping communities thrive, of changing the world for the better. And I've been wanting to learn more about them. I knew a few, but not the whole plethora of organizations. And so some of the best ways to do that is, hey, we'll do an episode on it. And then that makes me learn about it, right? Because otherwise, we would just sit here and look at each other. I mean, you're awfully cute and everything, but you know what I mean.
That would not make a great podcast. Yeah.
So nonprofits, when it comes to community change, nonprofits, local governments, not the only games in town.
Not even close. So, and I think a lot of people, even in the nonprofit sector, are surprised or maybe sometimes a little threatened when they realize how much is happening outside of the 501c3 world.
So what we're going to do is walk through, and this is not going to be a comprehensive list because this would be a half-day podcast, and nobody's got time for that. So we went through and picked some that we were most curious about, and wanted to share those with you, and so. Just wanted to talk about community-centered work that happens often alongside nonprofits and the strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages of each of the things that we're going to be talking about. So that's where we are today.
So we'll jump in after this message from our sponsor. Y'all, we are so very excited to introduce our listeners to the first Season 9 sponsor of the Fundraising HayDay podcast. Grant Guru is the world's largest aggregator of grants and funding, and this incredible prospect research tool has made its way all the way from Australia to the United States. It's a searchable database that is updated daily, and it is so user-friendly. We're joined today by Adrian Spencer, co-founder and director of Grant Guru, to learn more about this incredible product with a mini-series during the first 12 episodes of this season. Well, welcome back, Adrian. When I do prospect research for a client, I am often stuck using multiple search engines to get the full picture, from paid subscriptions for private funding to grants.gov, federal websites, all those kinds of things for public grants. But what I love about Grant Guru is that it is truly a one-stop shop. So tell us about the benefits of that for your users.
Oh, yeah. We hear this a lot. Like, it is so annoying to jump around and still not know, maybe, have I missed something? So you're right. Grant Guru is a one-stop shop. We include all government and non-government funding. That includes grants.gov, which actually don't technically list everything federally. So then we also include all the other federal grants. We include state grants, and we include all the trusts and private foundations, the 990s. But we're careful. There's over 500,000 private foundations, but not all of them award funding. So we're not going to clog up the database with irrelevant ones. There's only 150,000 that actually award grants. So we only list those. And we've got a team of 30 people just managing our data entries and our updates. Our aim is that you don't have to go anywhere else to find grants. One-stop shop. Let's keep it simple and make it easy.
I love that so much.
And for people who are thinking, what, it's 500,000 now, it's 150,000. That's still a lot. That's still a lot of folks for giving out grants. So don't let the numbers decrease for you. Find out more about this fantastic new resource for grant seekers. Visit grantguru.com/US. You get access to a user-friendly search engine, email alerts, grants calendar, customizable grant reports, and so much more.
And as an added bonus, Grant Guru is providing our listeners with 20% off their subscription. So when you go to make your purchase, use the discount code HayDay963. That's HayDay 963.
So I'd like to kick us off here talking about one that it's mutual aid societies. And this is something that has a long history. I mean, I know you have some information on that, but I became really aware of it during the pandemic, I would say. I mean, I sort of knew that sometimes people got together and helped each other, but this is a little bit more than that. And I just wanted us to dig in a little bit about that. So take it away.
Yeah, so mutual aid goes back centuries to immigrant communities, Black fraternal organizations, and even labor unions. The basic idea with the mutual aid society is neighbors helping neighbors, but in an organized way. So people are pooling their resources, bringing together money, food, time, skills, and they're distributing them directly to people who need them with no gatekeeping.
So it sounds pretty good, right? Especially if you're thinking like after a huge disaster, a hurricane or economic free fall, or during the pandemic, people were losing their jobs. They couldn't, things were happening. And so it became where I first became aware of it, although granted, it has a long history, and goes much, much further back. But this organized, not just neighbors being neighborly because they're nice people, which is beautiful, but an actual sort of organization coming together, kind of like an HOA, but doing good instead of just writing citations about grass and parking. Okay. Like, coming together, doing something good, but there's an organizing body around it. So it's fast, right? And it's trust-based because it's happening. Most of these are they're either place-based or work-based, maybe, if we look back at the history of labor unions. There are no board requirements like with a 501c3. You're not there's no incorporation, no costs for that. Usually no paid staff, but there are some downsides, right?
Yeah. Well, just like with any type of organization.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the downsides is sustainability, because like you mentioned, they don't have a board, they don't have paid staff, they don't, it's just kind of people coming together in the moment to do things. And while that moment can certainly be longer, without some of those structures in place, it's not set up to be self-sustaining necessarily. Most mutual aid networks, they run on volunteer energy, informal donations, and that kind of energy can burn out fast, especially if it's centered around a certain disaster, right? So it's kind of like, well, okay, the disaster's over, right? Also, there's no legal protection, so they're not incorporated, meaning you don't have any sort of shield as an organizer. and the protections you have if you were, say, an employee of a 501c3 nonprofit, right? And without that formal structure, it can be hard to either scale or coordinate with other systems. So that'd be the downside.
I would say too, we can also look at maybe just by the nature of what they do, maybe the question isn't how can they self-sustain, right? Like a nonprofit, that is, we have to answer the sustainability question all the time. But it's also, maybe it's, for me, when I'm looking at mutual aid societies, like I said, in the pandemic, but also like in Asheville post Hurricane Helene, those horrific floods for a couple of years ago. So it's almost like things come up as they're needed and then they subside. And so I think that's actually can be a beautiful thing and a needed thing. But I also know that because of its sort of more episodic in nature, sometimes they're playing well with nonprofits and sometimes nonprofits are playing well with them. I think there are probably some different ways that they could interact that would be beneficial.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of times mutual aid societies and nonprofits are doing complementary work, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And so it could be that the nonprofit is handling more of the long-term case management. Let's say in the term of disaster, they may be able to show up quickly. They may have a quick infusion of cash when it's needed the most. But then it's that nonprofit that, because we all realize in a disaster, right? Yes, there are certainly some immediate needs, but after your health is taken care of, like, okay, we've pulled you out of the rubble, you've got water, you've got a fresh set of clothes, but now your home has to be rebuilt and you may have long-term health needs. And there's a lot more to it, right? So that mutual aid society can be really helpful for that. Let's get in and get this done quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
And then the nonprofit can help with those longer term needs. But other times, of course, there's tension. Not everybody plays well in the sandbox together, because mutual aid organizers can often be skeptical of nonprofits. Like people who are drawn to that work may be more drawn to the fact that it's just like, let's get in and let's do it. And let's not worry about all these strings and other things. It's often called the nonprofit industrial complex when people are like not a fan of nonprofit.
I mean, to be fair, it is. It's one of the major nonprofits are one of the major employers in the United States, and certainly in the state of Georgia. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, it's this idea that formal nonprofits professionalize and, I'm going to mispronounce this word. What am I trying to say? Bureaucraticize. Is that right?
Bureaucraticize.
Thank you. I'm like, I know I'm not going to say this right, but I know what I'm trying to say. That they can do that to community care that takes away power from communities. And, sometimes nonprofits have the white savior complex and all kinds of things. So it's not always a mutual relationship, but it'd be lovely if it could be, right? Because they both bring strength to the table. And so I think they're one of those things where both are needed and both have strengths and both have pros and cons, and they're kind of different. And so, they should be able to mesh well together, but it doesn't always happen.
I think it's something to really consider. If you are a nonprofit working in emergency relief or community development or anything like that, as federal funding and then state funding is more and more volatile or uncertain around these things like disasters, pandemics, and things like that. Things are changing. Something else that I have heard tossed around, and I've even gotten asked about this from time to time, do I work with 501c4s? And of course, the answer for me is no. And I just sort of left it there for years and finally decided, why don't you educate yourself a little more about what they are? Oh. And where the interplays are, where the strengths and weaknesses are. So a traditional nonprofit, a 501c3, it really can do some advocacy, because this is a sore point with me. I've worked at
probably should.
Hello, can you please? And don't listen to board members who are like, no, we can't speak out. It's like, how's that working for you? How's that federal grant funding going for you? Okay. So I'm just saying, if you're a 501c3, you can advocate, which a synonym for that could be educate. You could educate your elected officials about certain issues. Maybe they're environmental issues. Maybe it's child health or food insecurity and hunger, or people who are unhoused, or veterans who need connection with mental health services. You can educate on the importance of that, the cost to society and to that person for not addressing these issues. That's advocacy. A 501c4 can do more endorsing of political candidates and what I would call more traditional lobbying things like, hi, hello, I really need you to vote yes on bill 00001 because it's really going to hurt us if that doesn't move through. It's going to hurt the people we serve, and it's going to hurt the constituents who vote for you. So we need you to come on up and do the right thing. It's more of a lobbying thing. And I think we can all see the difference between lobbying and advocacy. I know it's a very simplistic overview that I'm giving you right now. But so what a 501c4 can do is work in tandem, right, with a 501c3. It's kind of like if you work for a large nonprofit like a university or a hospital or maybe local government, they will also often have a foundation that is connected, but is not a grant making foundation mostly. Rather, it's more of a grant seeking foundation so that these agencies are able to pursue many different kinds of grants and fundraising. So, but with a 501c4, you give up your tax deductible donation benefit, which is probably why it's good to have a 3 and a 4. But in exchange, you can do a lot more heavy hitting advocacy beyond basic education, and you can lobby and a more assertively, and even get involved in political campaigns up to a point, as long as that's not the quote primary purpose of your organization. And I'm not going to name names and call things out today because there are a lot of people that play fast and loose with this. And there are a lot of nonprofits, including faith communities and other organizations, that do what I would consider lobbying. I'm just wanting to get out the differences between them, because if you're new to this, or you have clients that are asking you about this, or you can just learn a little bit more, educate yourself, and be ready to enter into these discussions about it, right?
And like Kimberly says, oftentimes you'll see 501c3s that have a 501c4 arm, and they're like sister organizations. So that the C4 can do kind of more of the heavy hitting,
Yep.
Lobbying type of work. Examples of large organizations you've probably heard of that are set up with these kinds of ways could be the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union. NRA, the National Rifle Association, the Sierra Club, which they're an environmental organization, right? All of these have both a C3 and a C4. The C3 handles education and direct services, and the C4 handles all the lobbying and the political engagement. And again, these are examples.
So what could possibly go wrong with any of that, Amanda? I'm just curious.
Nothing. Now, complexity for one thing. Anytime you've got two separate entities, that means they've got to have their own structures, and I'm sure you can share some things, but you kind of have to make sure the left hand's doing what it's supposed to and the right hand's doing what it's supposed to, and not coming between and doing the wrong things, because the rules around what each entity can and cannot do, especially around the coordination and shared resources, are genuinely complicated. So you definitely need good legal counsel to make sure that you're following what you're supposed to do on both sides. Also, C4s can receive unlimited corporate and individual donations without disclosing their donors, which is why you'll hear them talk about in the context of dark money. So if you've ever heard somebody talk about C4, well, it's dark money. Well, that's why, because they don't have to disclose where their money's coming from. And that is certainly a concern from a transparency standpoint for an organization.
Yeah, it's a concern for a lot of reasons. So, I'm just saying, I feel like a lot of 501c4s are not doing the Lord's work, as we say. And that's LORDT, if you are curious. And we'll explain it maybe another day. Another entity or classification that I've heard a lot about and seen in marketing and presentations, but never really explored it, is a B corporation or benefit corporation. I know you've seen those around, right? I mean, this is nothing new. It was just me sort of being in my own sort of nonprofit tunnel vision and local government, and that's understandable. But we got to learn. We got to keep on learning and learning. So
you're right. You see these things and
it's like, what are they?
You know it. And sometimes you're like, I don't want to ask, but how is that? Is the same? Is it different? So yeah.
And if you're listening going, y'all two are so ignorant, I'll be like, dude, start your own podcast and educate us. Just get on out there. It's okay. It's okay. We're starting with where we are. So and again, quick overview through some things that I've wondered about for years and Amanda's had questions about, and we're like, hey, why don't we talk about it?
Yeah.
So B Corps are for-profit with a slight difference. As we know, corporations are considered people by our Congress and have the same rights, and their primary mission is to create dividends for shareholders. This is not anything controversial. This is not, Congress approved this classification years ago, and that's why they exist. So everyone just take a deep breath and let's have a nice day. A B Corp, and I want to kind of distinguish between the legal structure and the certification. A B Corp is a for-profit business that has made a legal commitment, like a binding commitment, like marriage, a binding commitment that's legal. It's a legal commitment to consider the impact of its decisions on workers, customers, communities, and the environment, not just shareholders. So it's kind of like a legal commitment to being good corporate citizens. I think I would classify it like that.
It's not profit overall, right?
No, but it didn't. I mean, but it's not like, oh, we're not.
You're not a nonprofit.
No.
No.
And I would also say that, sidebar, nonprofits don't need to always lose money or break even. That's actually, it's a tax classification. Nonprofit doesn't mean suffer in silence with tools that don't work and leave people on waiting lists because, you're afraid to go out and ask for what you need. That's not the definition of a nonprofit. But for a B Corp, it's like, hey, yeah, we're still going to make some money. We are here to make money for our shareholders, but we also want to consider other key stakeholders, right? Workers, communities, environment, et cetera. So that's kind of where we're going with that.
Yeah. So as you said, B Corp, not a nonprofit. They can make a profit. They can pay their investors, but they're legally required to think about more than just that bottom line. So a B Corp is a B Lab, a nonprofit that issues the certified B Corp certification, requires that organizations meet rigorous standards across governance, workers, community, environment, and their customers. So think about companies like Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, and Seventh Generation, right? So they
also. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it Patagonia? Isn't there also Columbia? It's another clothing company that's special. I think they may be a B Corp too, but I'm not sure. But these other ones, yes, they're B Corps. So for me, I find that really compelling. It makes me want to vote with my pennies and dimes and nickels and quarters. And when I can, buy from those companies when it makes sense to do so. So for me, yeah, I find it really compelling.
Yeah. Well, and it's a sustainable model because they have revenue, they can grow, they can attract investors who care about their impact. They can pay staff market rate wages, and they're not dependent. Oh, I know. Shocking.
Fucking crazy now.
They're not dependent on grants or donations. And because they're operating in the market, they often have a kind of accountability that nonprofits don't, because they actually have to produce something people actually want to pay for, or they're going to go out of business, right?
I mean, fair.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that there's some downsides. I mean, sometimes B Corp, that certification can feel to me like when I am going to the store and I'm like, okay, eggs. Okay. They're the cheapest eggs. And then there are eggs that are free range. But what does that mean? Then there's organic free range. And then there's vegetarian fed hens, and they have little pictures on the side that like the hen. Yeah. And listen, we're from Georgia. We're from North Georgia. I know what chicken farms look like, and they do not look anything like the pictures on this egg label. So there's a part of me that remains skeptical, and I'm pretty sure you have some information about the downsides of B Corps. And I'm not saying that egg farmers are B Corps. I'm just saying labels can just be labels and nothing else, in my opinion, on this day.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, they are still a for-profit organization, meaning that the profit motive is still there. There have been cases of B Corps being acquired or changing leadership, and the new leadership drifting from their mission.
Sure.
Now, the certification does require renewal, but there are questions about how rigorous the ongoing oversight really is.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm not wearing pearls today, but if I did, I'd be clutching them and going, oh my goodness.
And you can't donate to them. You can't get a tax deduction. So it's just a very different funding relationship between B Corps.
I mean,
and at the end of the day, we're not saying one is better than the other. There are all these different mechanisms, and like anything in the world, people can use them and use them well for the way they were intended and can do amazing and fabulous things with them, or people can take advantage and use things not so well and just for the wrong reasons. So that's no matter what structure we're talking about here, someone out there has taken advantage of something, because
it's why we can't have nice things. We all know that. Also, if you are a consultant or a grant professional in nonprofit or local government, there might be opportunities for collaboration. For me, it's always, oh yeah, there. What other nonprofit agencies or local governments? And now I'm like, are there mutual aid societies? Are there B Corps? Are there other kinds of agencies that might be open to collaboration? Which is not only a good thing to do if it's done right and well, it's also something that funders like to fund. So I'm just putting that out there. Something else that's just been around for a long time that I knew a little bit about, but I think bears exploring a little briefly here in our little overview journey together is cooperatives or co-ops, right? Worker co-ops. I know there are a couple here in Atlanta that are like grocery store co-ops and things like that. They're businesses that are owned and democratically governed by their employees, right? So you don't have the CEO shareholder thing going on. It's a different setup. Every worker has an ownership stake and a vote. And I am aware, although I've never eaten there's some restaurants that are employee owned and businesses that are employee owned that kind of work like that. So forgive me if I'm confusing, maybe there might be another designation for that, but to me, it all sounds like cooperatives,
Yeah.
So
if you're in the United States listening to this, a good example of this is REI, the outdoor company. Though that's a consumer cooperative, so worker co-ops and community development could be home care agencies, grocery stores, manufacturing businesses in communities that would otherwise lose those jobs to closure or relocation. So maybe that's why you set that up.
And part of it, like I'm most familiar with grocery store co-ops where you buy a share literally, or something the equivalent to a share, but then you also sign up to work there. That's just part of what you do, and that's how they can keep it going. And in cities that are densely populated, that's been a model to get grocery stores in areas where the big chains won't or can't go. That can be an option. So the money stays in the community with co-ops. Workers can build equity. Decision-making power is perhaps more evenly distributed. It's just a really different power structure than even a nonprofit. I mean, as groovy, crunchy, and wonderful as some nonprofits can be, a lot of times you're still looking at that traditional top-down leadership structure, that hierarchy. And co-ops tend to keep going. They're able to sort of survive through economic downturns because the workers have an actual stake in keeping the business going. So those are some good things that can happen. But as with everything else we've talked about today, there are downsides.
So raising startup capital can be really difficult. Banks are often skeptical because this is not a traditional model, and we know banks don't like to go out on a limb. And the ownership model doesn't fit traditional equity investment, so that can be a problem. Governance can take real skill and can be slow. When you're trying to get everybody to agree and figure out how it's going to work, it's a lot more complicated than just one person or a handful of people making the decisions. And building a culture of shared ownership is generally hard, especially in communities where people are used to traditional employee-employee relationships. So even though everybody might think this is a good idea, it goes against the grain of how most of us have operated for the majority of our lives with where we've worked, even where we volunteered at places. And so it's kind of a mind shift to participate. So
it's by human beings working together. So there's always going to be drama. And I feel like there's a herding cats kind of thing. And it is giving HOA vibes to me, having served on a condo HOA board years ago. It's like you've got well-meaning people, and then you've got people who are living their quasi-CEO dreams. You've got disagreements about paint color or what kind of oatmeal to order or whatever it is. And so, it takes that mindset of, we're just going to have to work together. And I may be working around people whose views are really different than mine, but we're all here to keep this grocery store open it's, there are just so many different kinds of organizations and groups and things that easily, as I said, this could easily be a 4-hour episode, but we're not doing that. So I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump into community land trusts. And again, that's been around a long time, but if you are a local government or nonprofit and you've never heard of this before, you just kind of know the term but are not really sure what it means, here we are. We're going to break it down. At the last nonprofit where I worked before I started my consulting business, there was a community land trust very nearby, and we did some cooperative programming with them. But a community land trust, or a CLT, is a nonprofit. So the nonprofit permanently owns the land and then leases it to the homeowners or businesses at what should be and need to be affordable prices. So you own, in this case, there were townhomes and small houses on this land, and the homeowners owned the structures, but not the land. And so it's all about, when they sell, then in a CLT, then there's like a formula in place, so you can sell it only for this much of market value, or it varies from land trust to land trust. And the idea is that this land doesn't get overdevelopment in place, which is super easy to do in Atlanta. So I totally get that. And the idea is it keeps it affordable for the next buyers. And this is something, if you're living in a community with rapid gentrification, which is not a good thing for the people who are living there, who have lived there for generations, if their land is and homes are being gentrified, because it usually prices them out and they have to move. This is a way to keep neighborhoods intact, and maybe a way to ensure small stocks of affordable housing. And it's also been something that has been proven to work sort of over generations, but not just for one person or one sale. So it's kind of like a big land version of the co-op. Like, sounds really interesting and good on paper, but the reality, I think, is a different story.
Yeah. Well, the pros are that you've got permanent affordability, which, again, depending on where in the world you're living, that can be huge. Community ownership of a key asset. You've got strong community buy-in because residents are involved in the governance of things.
Yeah.
So lovely. But then the cons are that, first of all, acquiring land in the first place takes time and capital. And depending on where you are and what time, when you're starting.
Oh, and zoning, right? Because I know your husband works, it has to deal with this all day, every day.
yeah.
Zoning restrictions. You have to sometimes rewrite some codes to even make it happen because people are like, "You're doing what?" So yeah.
Fit the norm. So, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the resale restrictions can be confusing or even off-putting to some buyers because of it. It's like, wait, because a lot of people, for a lot of people, myself included, my biggest investment is my home, right? Knowing that it's going to grow in equity. And so when we come to sell it, hopefully we'll make money off of that. And the CLTs, that's really not the purpose of it, right? So
I mean, you could make some money off of your home, but it's not going to be the home and the land bonanza. Also, having come of age when home ownership was sort of the ultimate American dream and having participated in home ownership over the years, things have changed and it's not this panacea to your wealth building strategy that you think it is. Here could be a solution, but it is it's something intricate and complex with lots of moving parts. So another moving away from land trusts and co-ops and the like, and sort of back into B Corps and businessy kinds of things. Social enterprises should be something familiar to most people listening, particularly here in the United States. It can be a nonprofit or a for-profit that uses business strategies, right? I love that, business strategies, because aren't we all tired of businessy people telling us how to run nonprofits? I'm going to qualify that and say decent and good and non-damaging business strategies to generate revenue sort of in a pursuit of a social mission. So an example I can think of in Atlanta is there's a long-standing nonprofit that is like a Meals on Wheels kind of thing where they're getting food out to folks who are unable to get out and shop for themselves for many different reasons. And they developed a meal prep kind of meal delivery business alongside of that, and that is their profit-making arm, and that is their social enterprise, right?
a great example is the Girl Scouts, right? Girl Scout cookies is a social enterprise.
Yeah, it is. It is. I feel I run from them though, because for me, a single serving of Girl Scout cookies is the entire sleeve. So maybe I could buy for others, but I'm like, I can't be taking those tagalogs in my house because gone, daddy, gone.
Just for me.
No. Another example, I know we've touched on this in some of the trainings that we've done before. I think is it based in San Francisco? It's a nonprofit that also runs a restaurant, and the restaurant, there's paid opportunities for young people to learn the restaurant business and get skills in all aspects of that, and also business building. So you can go in there and you're just eating a meal. So it's not I'm becoming a part of your monthly giving, or I'm participating on Giving Tuesday or whatever. It's like, I'm here to eat food, and the proceeds of this are going to benefit this program kind of thing.
I think there's a lot of those. I believe I was in Louisville. Our good friend Bethany Planton took me to eat lunch one day at a place just like that. So I think there's a lot of those.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of those around. So yeah, that's a good example. I like it.
Okay, so one more category I want to touch on is place-based philanthropic collaboratives and collective impact structures. That's a mouthful, but
it is.
These aren't really organizations, but more like structures, and they often involve a mix of nonprofits, government agencies, businesses, foundations, community members, kind of everybody coming together and having that kumbaya moment, right? And so they're going to coordinate around a shared goal within their specific geography. So maybe it's within a city or a county, or maybe even a zip code, or area, kind of an area, because there's something they're trying to do and they know they can't do it alone. So they're creating a place-based philanthropic collaborative.
I have never formalized either of those names, but I have certainly been involved in collaborative fundraising that has involved this. I don't have direct experience putting together that collaborative. You and I, we've worked with letters of intent and memorandums of understanding or agreement. This to me is you're actually cementing this through a contractual kind of process.
Yeah.
But there are some foundations that are the Zeiss Foundation in Atlanta, I think, is a good example of place-based philanthropy. And I'm pretty sure they're branching out. Obviously, they make grants to organizations that serve the places that they focus on, but they probably have some more formalized arrangements around things like that. But it's to me, that's, even though the name is a big mouthful, it's like the most familiar to me in terms of how I've worked for all of these that we've discussed. So it's the strength of it is the coordination. What I was getting at, it's like everybody's pulling together with shared data, with shared accountability. The flip side is it probably takes a foundation for the money, because it takes a lot of money and time to pull this together. And also, when you think about it, and I'm not talking about any specific foundation or organization that's leading this, it does kind of concentrate the power on the organization that has the most money. Again, human nature. And sometimes the community voices could get lost in that process. I mean, we've seen that a lot. We've seen that a lot in nonprofit and local government work, certainly.
I would not at the time or until now realizing that that's what this is, but I actually participated in something like this when I was in high school. I lived my first 2 years of high school. We lived in Leavenworth, Kansas, which had its own unique set of issues because you've got the federal prison is there, the military prison is on Fort Leavenworth. And there's a couple other, there's like 4 prisons within so many square miles. And as you can imagine, having those there has brought a certain element of crime and other issues and social issues and just all kinds. It was a very unique, you've got a lot of rural Kansas people living there. You got military transient coming in and out. You just have a lot going on. And so there was a lot of the city, some nonprofits in the area, the faith community were worried about the youth and making sure that they had the resources and the things that they needed to become productive members of society, long and short of it. So they pulled together, and I don't even know, I think it was through my parents, but my family got invited to participate because they wanted some parents, they wanted some teenagers, they wanted a whole bunch of people. And so I remember we'd go and we'd meet, I don't know how many times, and ended up, I don't know who took the lead, but wrote and got a grant to start a youth center. So kids had a place to go after school and hang out that was safe and could learn, enjoy time and have classes and all kinds of things. And I think they got a grant for a couple of years to help pay salary and to, I think there was an old building they fixed up. And so so that was
nice.
I had totally forgotten about doing that back in the day when I was like 16 years old. But
back in the day, yeah, a lot of these things aren't new concepts or organizations or entities. It's just something that I have never really fully explored. And I know, Mandy, when we were talking about this topic, you're like, yeah, I don't know, I mean, but yet you had, it didn't have that big, long official bureaucracy's name. But anyway, yeah.
Clearly, today has been a whirlwind of alternatives to 501c3s today. And if nothing else, at least now you're aware when people are talking about it, you kind of have a little bit of a handle on it. Or it may be something that you're like, ooh, I think I'd like to work for one of these or check these out. Or, again, especially that last example, maybe something that you're like, hey, we do have some place-based issues and things. We do need to bring together all these groups and let's make it more than just like
official.
Hey, let's go have coffee and talk, so.
Yeah. So if there are things that we didn't talk about today when it comes to these different kinds of organizations and entities in sort of adjacent to the nonprofit local government sector, let us know. And we could do a part 2 about this. I just think we should always be, and I'll speak for myself, I always want to be making sure that I am learning and growing, not just as a grant professional, but just as a human being, and just learning what other options are out there, because it can seem like we're in lockstep to behave in certain ways and do our business in certain ways and fundraise in certain ways. And that's just not true. Thanks again to today's sponsor, Grant Guru. If you want to learn more about this incredible new tool to the grant prospect research market, visit grantguru.com/US. You'll find the link in our show notes.
And remember, they are providing a 20% off discount code on your subscription. So when you go to make your purchase, enter the code HayDay963. That's HayDay 963. Well, we covered a lot today: mutual aid, 501c4s, B Corps, worker cooperatives, community land trusts, social enterprises.
And that last one, the place-based collective thing.
All the things.
All the things. So again, the more we understand what these other models do and how they work, the better we can be as collaborating, working together, and just helping transform communities into ways that they want to be.
Absolutely. So we are always honored when you choose to spend your time with us. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks, where we're going to talk about how to get the information you need from team members and clients, because grant writing is not a solo sport.
Or grant management either.
True story. So we're going to talk about all the ways to get the information you need, and it may involve pie. I'm just saying.
It just might.
See y'all.
Bye.